What's up, guys? So as you know, I buy and sell quite a bit of gear, and I've kind of gotten to the point where I think I have all the analog parts that I need, and a lot of what I do is in the box these days anyway. However, there's one piece of gear I do regret selling, and that was the Overstayer M-A-S, or Overstayer M-A-S. And it was something I used on my stereo bus sometimes, or I would use it on drums or bass, and it really gave some really good harmonics to sounds and could shape a sound in really cool ways. Didn't feel like I needed it one day and sold it, and regretted it ever since. I was trying to buy a new one, but they've been a little bit back-ordered. So when I saw Softube came out with the plug-in version, I was really excited to check it out. So in today's video, we're going to check out the Overstayer M-A-S. I also have my friend Joel in Nashville who sent me some audio examples of the hardware unit, which he still has, so we can do some comparison, and I'm happy to say that they're pretty close as long as you do a certain amount of tweaking. And then lastly, they came out with the Overstayer Extended, which adds a bunch of filters to the mix, which can really help you to shape the sound in a bunch of ways you can't do with the hardware. So let's get into the video. All right, guys, so here's the plugin, and what we'll do is we'll go through this one and the extended version, and then we'll listen to some examples just like we always do. So this is the first of the two plugins, and this one is the one that's mostly like the original, or essentially is like the original. You have a high shelf and a low shelf, and then you have a low cut here, right? Pretty self-explanatory. This is, I think, 2 dB at 10, and this is 2 dB plus 2 dB at 100, if I remember correctly. Then you have an input and output, right? You have this 2 dry, which applies the same gain to the dry signal as the wet signal, okay? And then you have this auto button, which basically auto compensates the output. And because what happens is the more you drive this thing, the more saturation obviously comes, and obviously the louder it gets, which was always tricky with the hardware because, you know, louder sometimes sounds a lot better. So this auto output actually works really well. Then you have these 3 different buttons over here, okay? You have dual, which adds a second discrete stage in series to the signal path, spreading the load amongst both stages, creating a more complex harmonic character, okay? So it adds a second stage of harmonics, basically. Then the second is shifts the responsibilities of the circuit to have a stronger second harmonic content. So what that means is you know, gives it a little bit more warmth, which a lot of times second harmonics give, which I tend to like in. And then the emphasis, which is the loud one, just engages the emphasis circuit and the 6 different emphasis items below, which are these, and we'll go through these too. So the classic M-A-S, or M-A-S, however they want to say it, is just like the classic version, and I'll play you some examples soon. We have this one, and then I have a couple that Joel sent me of the same settings. Well, we had to change the settings to get it to be the same, but the same settings as a hardware version. Now, what's different about this one to compare to the hardware version is these other 5 settings they have. And I'll just run through them as they were described because it's probably easier than me babbling on. So you have the low bandwidth setting, and what that is high and low frequencies will distort first, then leaving the mids unaffected. Then low presence, which emphasis on the vocal frequencies in the upper mid-range to give more clarity. Then a high presence, which emphasizes the vocal frequencies in the lower high range to add some air and shimmer. So air and shimmer, high presence, makes sense. Bass distortion does exactly what you think, thins out the bass while keeping the higher highs unaffected, okay? This can sound transformer-like on bass, heavy auto material, stuff like that. Treble distortion is almost like a tape-like sound where the rough edges of, or the harsh transients will be smooth or rounded down. It's also similar to how the human ear perceives the frequency spectrum. So that is that one. Let's check out the other plugin. All right, so here is the Overstayer Extended. And what I got here is this EQ curve analyzer, which sometimes can help you guys to just see what it's doing. I know it's helpful for me sometimes, and we're such visual mixers, which is not a good thing these days. It just helps see what's going on. But this works the same way. So the top end is the front, the same as the top of the original Overstayer, the first plugin we looked at. However, they don't have any of the other options, which I kind of wish they would have included. I'm not sure why they didn't. Maybe it's so you can make your own different settings, but would have been cool to have the other things included, is what it is. So I'm assuming it's just like regular Overstayer M-A-S with the EQ settings. Now, these EQ settings are pretty basic. So you have a high pass filter here. You got to turn it on and you can see it works there. It's called a resonance filter too, which is pretty cool for getting some kind of unique sounds, or if you want to thicken up the bass, stuff like that. Then the bass dB is what they call it. Now, if you notice, I'm turning this and nothing's happening, but you see this black arrow that's going with it. So what these all do, all the EQs except for the filters are the same, as they boost or cut, right, before the saturation processing, and then do the opposite on the after. So that way you can push more distortion of the bass, but then bring it down at the same time, if that makes sense. Now, the cool thing is you can turn that off. So if I take this off, I can just boost. And now I'm actually just, using the bass dB, which looks to be like a low shelf. And then I can even cut it independently on my own. So if I just want to do a little bit, I can do it like that. So pretty cool that you're able to do both, right? Then you have a presence. So they're identical, just do different things. I'm pretty sure they're identical. 5, yeah, they're both at 1 hertz, 1K. So same thing, but you could boost down here and then cut up here, something like that. And then lastly, you have the high shelf. And so this is the same thing as the low, high shelf. You can turn on this and then, do that. So you see it's not doing anything. And then lastly, low pass filter to do the opposite of the high pass filter. And it has the resonance filter on it as well. All right, guys, so let's go back to the regular plugin and check it out. I got this little drum loop and we'll start pushing it and you guys can hear what it does. First, let's just bypass it from where it starts with the classic on, okay? So to start with on and then I'll turn it off. So just by turning it on, you guys can hear the difference. That's what I love about this thing. It can be subtle, but just add some like energy to some like thickness and heaviness to it. And that's kind of what sold me on the original hardware. Is it's supposed to kind of sound like what driving a console can sound like. And as you see, we'll turn the input up and you'll hear it really start working. And as of right now, we just have the emphasis in. So it's just this. So you can see how just in these few moves, how creative you can be with this. You can drive the input, get it kind of distorting, but then bring the mix down and you don't hear it distorting as much, but there's a thickness, there's more thickness there and a rounding off of the transients, but in a good way. So let's crank this up and just go through these just so you guys can hear them really quick. So you hear on that bass distortion how it's kind of thins out, but starts getting to sound a little more junky. I like it. So all of them have their own unique sounds, right? Then you can dial it back and then check out these filters. So I used to do this a lot on my mix bus. I'd have it like 5 and then do a high and low shelf. And that's just the changes we're hearing. The volume is staying pretty much the same, but you can hear how different it sounds. Let's throw on the second harmonics and the dual and see what that sounds like. All right, guys, so next, let's check out the Overstayer versus the hardware, okay? So this is our kick and snare like we've been listening to, right? then this is the exact setting. I have it bypassed, but I just have this. This is the exact setting I sent to Joel. So he ran this through at this setting, right? I'll just keep this down here so you guys can kind of remember where we're at. Then I played the back versus mine, and at 5, it didn't sound the same. So I'll play these for you. It just sounded a bit different. So that sounds pretty close. Most guys aren't going to hear the difference with the AB on that. And then lastly, what we did is we did the same thing, but we turned on these filters, right? And this sounded quite a bit different. And maybe, you know, Joel was telling me with his experience, he had to really drive the plugin in order to get the same thing as what the hardware was doing originally, like just on a basic setting at 5. So that was kind of an interesting thing. We got to drive this harder in order to get what the Overstayer actually can do, but you can get there, and that was what was cool to me. And maybe you could drive the hardware harder and get some more, you know, more saturation out of it. Maybe that's something, because you can put this up to 10 and it's still not quite getting there sometimes, although, you know, you could gain more into it. But maybe that's one of the limitations of the plugin. Maybe that's something the hardware can do that the plugin can't do. However, most of my time I've used the Overstayer, it wasn't to like drive some crazy saturation, distortion thing. I have other plugins that can do that better. So for what I like about the Overstayer, the plugin is doing what the hardware does, which is great news, at least for me. But let me play this for you. So this is with the filters, and then this is with the filters hardware here. So with that one, it's a little bit harder to kind of get the same. Almost feels like the low shelf on the Sofware version is higher or something. I don't know. It just feels bassier on the plugin version. But you know, as I said, for most of the stuff we got pretty close. And I'm sure if I had the hardware unit here, we could dial it in a little more. But that's what you get. The good news is they sound really close to each other, plugin and hardware. So that's all we got today, guys. I love this plugin. I'm a big fan of Overstayer in general. They're a great company here in LA. Make sure to check out the plugin, check out the hardware if you're interested. You can do a lot of cool stuff with that as well. Let me know what you think about the plugin in the comments below. And if you need your songs mixed and mastered, hit me up at mixandmastermysong.com. You can also find my courses and presets there too. Talk to you soon.